Hello, welcome to Beyond the Paperwork, what I've learnt as a SEN parent, where I'm going to be vulnerable and share my experience of the SEN world. I had to sit down and ask myself, what would I ask someone if I was to interview them about their experience? And I wrote down the questions, and then it was time for me to answer them myself. When did I realise the system wasn't working? I realised the system wasn't working when I'd raised concerns about my child's development to a doctor. And instead of being listened to, the focus was placed on the time at my PTSD diagnosis. And the focus was purely on my mental health. In that moment, I felt overlooked as a parent. And it would still yet take another 12 months before a different professional finally came to recognise the concerns that myself and my husband had. And the issues we had been raising. And I think for me, that was the start. That's what changed everything for me on my outlook and what essentially was the start of my experience. Now, the other question, what I thought being a SEN parent would be versus the reality of what a SEN parent is in my experience. Before becoming a SEN parent, I had professional experience in working with SEN children. I had trained and I had my qualifications, and I thought that made me prepared. The reality was I was very naive. I was so naive because educating and working with SEN children is very, very different to raising them. Very different. You are their safe space, you are their safe zone. So the letdowns with emotions that you're going to receive as compared to what we're dealing with in the schools and the nursery, they're two very distinctive things. I was naive, to say the least. I thought I had it cat in the bag, I know what I'm doing when it came to my own child. Once I was raising a child with SEN needs, woof, was I introduced to reality quick, fast, hard, and very, very sharp. And it was a bumpy ride, to say that. Very. But I feel like I needed that sharp slap into reality, if you will, because we can be so naive, and at times as a community we can judge other parents. Before we have a SEN child ourselves, we can judge if other parents go, I'll never let my child behave like that. Until you're actually in that zone, you have no idea with what you're dealing with. Zero. And there is no amount of training that is going to prepare you for your own SEN child. Because there are emotions involved, because we love our child. We want to help our child. And when you put emotions into play, it's a very, very different reality from what we expect. Early support and challenges. So when my child was under 5, we had access to early intervention, such as speech and language, feeding therapy. But however, what we did tend to notice is as he got older, the support was very reduced. And it came with increased challenges, because without the external support, you know, he wasn't thriving. The primary school he was in at the time in London, it felt like they were very hesitant to act and put support in place. And although we had very frequent meetings, meaningful progress was very limited. It was very limited. He would be in reception class, and I remember the first time they came home with their first set of homework in reception, and, you know, I was in a parents' WhatsApp group and we were all exchanging, oh look, they've got their first set of homework. Every other child had been given phonics, reading book, numbers to practice. My child had been given shapes to colour. He was the only one. Now, he wasn't the only one in the class with needs, might I add, but he was the only one given that. I then later found out through meetings that when the teachers couldn't handle his behaviour due to his diagnosis, they would just send him down to nursery. He was being excluded. And that broke my heart, because they clearly weren't even trying. They weren't trying at all. That hurt my heart for him. My positive turning point in the SEN world. We relocated from London to Berkshire, Reading. And for me, I feel like that's when everything changed in a very positive way. The primary school my son got into once we moved to Reading, they were so proactive and so supportive. Meetings took place every 6 weeks. Support plans were adapted and tweaked as and when needed. The communication with them were consistent. And they showed me what good support looks like. You know, we worked collaboratively, sharing strategies between home and school. And my son started to enjoy school. And he was achieving academic milestones we didn't think he would achieve, or that we would see. You know, it was a thought process to us that these milestones were once unlikely. And despite the funding challenges across the UK, the school demonstrated that the good practice was still very much possible, even with limited funding and resources. The school were amazing. I still recommend this school, especially, you know, now I've got my third child going into that very setting, because they showed me what good support could look like. Now, I know that can vary from people to people. One, you know, my experience may not be the same experience as another SEN parent within that setting, but in my experience, the support was phenomenal, and Senko were amazing, the staff were amazing, and my son, I'll be honest, my son gave them a really hard time. He did. You know, he gave them a really hard time, but never once did they ever give up on him. And I'm internally grateful for that, you know. And I would like to say that is a happily ever after, but it's not a happily ever after, because my son then left that primary school and he moved on to secondary school. And I'm now facing the challenges I once faced with him in his first primary school in London. And his secondary school, again, I've had meeting after meeting, we've put provisions in place, and then I'm finding out months later down the line, they've removed these provisions without even contacting me, without setting up a plan, do review meeting, and then in the next breath they're calling me saying, well, he's struggling in lessons. Well, why is he struggling in lessons? We had the provisions put in place. And then I'm finding out, oh, well, we removed the provisions because he was doing so well. That shows the provisions are working, so why are we removing them? And then you're calling me saying that there's issues. And so now I'm back dealing with a difficult school, and I've gone from having a negative experience with my son's first primary school to a wildly positive one once we moved to Reading, and now he's in secondary school. I've gone 100 steps back and I'm back at the beginning, and I'm having to fight the battle yet again. And it's going to keep being fought until either the school shape up, or at the moment what we're waiting for is to actually transfer him to another secondary school, which is very well known for their SEN support. I think if I could share one key message with people and with schools, because not every school does this, and I'm not saying that every school is bad, I'm not saying every school, you know, is good, or, you know, they've got the right support, but just an overall message is work with the parents. We are already in tune with our child, and don't give up on the child or the family, because it only takes one educator to make such a significant difference to a child's experience and to affect parent feeling seen, heard and supported. You know, because behind every piece of paperwork is a child, and there is a family fighting, trying to be heard and to be seen and to be supported and to have provisions put in place. That child is not just a number on a piece of paper. They are a human being, and they have a very supportive background behind them. And the aim is to support the child, include the child, and just do the best for the child. So, to answer the question, as the title states, what have I learned as a SEN parent? Well, through my experience as a SEN parent, I've learnt that the systems do not always listen early enough. And when they don't, families are left to fight just to be heard. I've discovered that professional knowledge cannot fully prepare you for the emotional, ongoing reality of raising a child with additional needs. I have seen how inconsistent support can cause children to struggle, and how the burden of families is often invisible. But most importantly, I've learned that when schools work in tune and in true partnership with parents, listening, adapting and showing consistency, outcomes can change dramatically. And sometimes it only takes one educator to make that life-changing difference. Thank you.